Namaste, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a discussion on the tactical specifics of first-in-human clinical investigations. Now, in the last two episodes, you heard about the strategic specifics of first-in-human studies from 𝗀𝗏, and today we're going to talk tactics. We're going to talk tactics with my colleague and a veteran of numerous clinical studies, including first-in-human studies, Frank Maier. Frank.
Hello, Jay.
Yeah, I was just going to say welcome to the chat. I see you're excited about it, which makes me just as excited as you are. But before we get started, I want to say thank you for being willing to share your experience and expertise in the area. All right, Frank?
Yes.
So let's get right to it, my friend. I want to focus specifically on execution today because I find that companies all the way from startups to large companies in MedTech are slightly, I shouldn't say hesitant, are slightly unaware of all the details and all the nuances associated with the execution of something like a first-in-human study. For a pivotal study, I'd say the bigger ones have it. But for first-in-human studies where there may be tweaks that need to be made to just the workflow or the standard of care, they'll have to work with the PI a little bit, make some tweaks to it. There is some uncertainty as far as the execution of first-in-human studies are concerned. Therefore, I want to pose the question to you. From a first-in-human study execution perspective, what are the steps a manufacturer needs to pursue? How do they get the wheels in motion? And just what's the overall process like?
Yes, so Jay, I can talk about that for hours, but I want to keep that short and effective. So from a clinical investigation execution perspective, an initial key element is to clarify the roles and responsibilities between sponsor and RQM+. Also, the timelines need to be set for the startup phase, the enrollment phase, the follow-up phase, and also the closeout phase. Especially during the startup phase, many tasks can be done in parallel, which can lead to an expedited process. When we prepare the essential documents, either on a study level or on a site level, we ensure that the documentation is in line with the relevant regulations, guidelines, and also national laws. During the enrollment and follow-up phase, usually the focus is on enrollment target, protocol compliance, and safety reporting. During the closeout phase, it's again a joint effort between different functional areas, such as biostats, data management, medical writing, monitoring, and again, many things can be done in parallel during the closeout phase.
Got it. So Frank, you've made a number of points, all of which are critical. I see you've hit all of the high points. I just want to bring it together. You emphasized there needs to be a close collaboration between the manufacturer, or what we refer to as sponsor in clinical trial parlance, as well as the CRO. It's important to work with someone who's been there and done it. And along those lines, it's really important to work with somebody who has people at the local level. And this is underappreciated, but it's very important because rules, regulations, and requirements tend to change all the time, right? Whether you're talking Central or South America versus the US versus Eastern, or for that matter, even Western Europe, requirements tend to change all the time. So it's very important to have people on the ground. That's one thing. The other thing that I thought was very important in what you mentioned, Frank, was local government requirements. These tend to get overlooked because we're thinking ISO 14155 or the FDA regulations, and then we focus on the EC and IRB. But there are local governmental requirements that you cannot overlook. So there is that. And then Frank, you also mentioned the three different phases. You talked about the startup, you talked about the follow-up, you talked about closeout, things that can be done in parallel. But I think this is where effective project management is very, very important, because you need to coordinate activities not only within each phase, but also the handoff across the different phases. Frank, thank you for the details in terms of what it takes and the collaboration that it takes, and the importance of working with people who've been there and done it. Now, having said that, in terms of actual study execution, where could one go wrong?
Of course, many things can go wrong during the course of a study, for sure. But today I want to focus on safety reporting in medical device studies, and safety reporting must follow the definitions and processes outlined in ISO 14155, of course, and the MDCG 2020-10 guidelines. The relevant section in the protocol needs to be properly written and focus on event definitions, investigator and sponsor responsibilities, and timelines. In the safety management plan, you can outline in detail the reporting requirements, templates to be used for the reporting, and dedicated timelines for the involved countries. Having that said, meeting the reporting deadlines is of great importance. When preparing a case for reporting and the case is missing some information, it's better to send the incomplete initial report and provide the authority with a follow-up report instead of missing the deadlines.
Frank, just reminds me of an experience that I had in my previous role as a clinical team lead. There was a study in terms of event definition that you had mentioned. There was a study wherein the definition of myocardial infarction was not the same across different sites. Now, this is not first-in-human specific, but it really plagued the results for this manufacturer's clinical study and led to a lot of trouble. So, yeah, thank you for giving us that level of detail that you just did. Let's move on. Same track. What are the key areas that manufacturers either tend to ignore or tend to pay relatively less attention to when operationalized specifically a first-in-human study?
Yeah, so I can give you a few examples on that topic. So, for example, the proper risk management documentation in line with ISO 14971 and ISO 14155. The benefit risk analysis needs to be outlined in the protocol as well as in the investigator brochure. Especially the residual risks, including the definition of the nature, incidence, severity, and outcome, need to be presented in the IB and the instructions for use as well. Another topic is the information on the anticipated adverse device effects. These need to be clearly stated in the protocol, including the rationale for the related benefit-risk ratio, and also the anticipated adverse device effects need to be listed in the patient information sheet, including their likelihood of occurrence.
Excellent.
So we do see that these items are not properly covered from time to time. However, ISO 14155 and also ISO 14971 give clear guidance on that topic. Another thing which came to my mind is the proper preparation of the submission packages for EC and competent authority submissions. We prefer to tell our clients that it is better to invest more time in the preparation instead of receiving a long query letter from the authorities.
Makes a lot of sense. All right, I want to switch tracks, Frank. Another key area of focus when it comes to first-in-human studies is the choice of geographical location. And there are many factors that go into it. From your experience, from your perspective, what are some of the considerations for a manufacturer towards deciding where to conduct a first-in-human study?
Yeah, so one aspect is the experience of the study team and especially the investigators. This clearly relates to training on the investigational device and comparator product. And this is also important in case a novel device or a novel technology is used. Also relevant to consider is why a sponsor wants to consider a certain region. Is it because of the key opinion leaders, or is the focus more on speedy approval timelines? On another note, sponsors should also bear in mind the fees to be paid to a site when running a clinical investigation, because in various EU countries, the hospitals tend to request an overhead fee on top of the per patient fee, which can significantly increase the budget. I think that this is of special importance for smaller. I think that this is of special importance for smaller startup companies, particularly.
Excellent point. Excellent point. Everyone is budget conscious, right? Including the bigger companies. So this is, in my experience, it tends to be an area that really tends to get overlooked in terms of location-specific fees and so on, and can wreak havoc on your budgets. No, thanks for highlighting that, Frank. And since you made good points, I want to probe that aspect a little bit more. Any thoughts on some of the items that manufacturers need to take into careful consideration when pursuing these geographies, once again, from an execution perspective, over and above what you've just mentioned?
Yeah, so frequently manufacturers want to conduct first-in-human studies outside the US.
Yes.
Eastern Europe,
Yes.
Australia, New Zealand, Central and South America, and sometimes even Western EU are target geographies.
Right.
Sometimes it is due to the presence or even absence of a certain target patient population, presence or absence of certain key opinion leaders, ease of enrollment, or the length of time it takes to get EC or competent authority approvals.
Excellent points. Excellent points. So Frank, you've been in this area for a while. You've run clinical trials for multiple devices. I personally know you've done first-in-human studies, you've done pivotal trials. Do you have any interesting anecdote, or do you have any comments on best practices, this time in connection with first-in-human studies?
Yeah, I think that I can keep that short and simple. I would say that manufacturers need to work with those who are experts in the field and are experienced in the area, and also have the skills to support a manufacturer with know-how to harness all the best practices in industry to date.
Excellent. And the key point coming out of this is choose your partners carefully when it comes to deciding whether you want to do it yourself through expertise internally, or whether you want to outsource running a clinical trial to a CRO. You really need to be working with people who've been there and done it and are abreast with the latest geography-specific, national-specific requirements.
Yeah, truly said. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Frank, really, thanks a lot for sharing your
You're welcome.
vast experience from over time. Until next time, thank you all for listening, and looking forward to working with you all. Thank you very much.